It's Wednesday, October the 20th, King of the Mountain State Show. I'm Chase Hill. I'm here with the Ringmaster, James Armstrong. We're going to break down the event we just had this previous weekend. It was round 3 down at the Welch Armory in Welch, West Virginia. We've made it all the way now to the championship round. We'll give you a slight preview of what's coming up, but first, let's break down this past event. James, thanks for being here with me.
Thanks for having me, brother.
So we had 10 fights that night. There was 4 pro fights, 6 amateur fights. We're going to get through some of them. The first 2 we're going to be pretty quick with. D'Angelo Evans out of Virginia, trained by Marcus Luck, advanced to 2-0 as a pro with his win in the first bout over Calvin Wimbush Jr. He stopped him in the first round. Really looks to be the part. And in fight number 2, Michael Watts earned a first-round knockout over C.J. Matthews in an amateur bout. That was Watts' first victory as a boxer. He's got plenty of size, looks to have some good skill. We'll be watching him, see how he develops. First fight I really want to dive into is a name that we're familiar with, is Bobby Freshness. He's now fought with us several times. He's been a staple in the tournament. He went up against probably one of his biggest oppositions to date in AJ Materna. Materna came in with about a 4-1 record through some MMA and different stuff like that. Bobby had told us that he had really been working his butt off. He was keeping quiet. He was staying behind the scenes and really been putting in the work, and it showed.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great fight. It ended up being a majority draw, and, all night long, I'm glad that I didn't have to be a judge, and that was one of them. Materna comes out of Joe Board's gym, so he's going to be prepared. You and I talked all night long about how we love when we're sitting ringside and we hear the coach say, hey, go with this, that, and the other. Next thing you know, they do exactly that, and it works. That's one of my favorite things about boxing. That's the whole science thing behind it. It's not just, not just anybody can walk in there and do it. So, and Freshness looked just like he said he was going to. They boxed. There was no brawling to it. It wasn't like it was 2 wrestlers in there. They looked great. So, great fight. 2 great guys, accepted the draw, and, understand that that's how it falls sometimes. But Bobby Freshness looked great too.
Yeah, and Materna, he hadn't fought in 3 years. So Materna comes in with some ring rust. He's a really dynamic fighter. I've been trying to find the best I can find to put against Bobby Freshness. Like, I'm trying to challenge him. I know what's coming next for him. He knows what's coming next for him. I'm trying to get him ready for that by putting him against the best I can find. He never bats an eye, no matter who it is. When Materna showed up, I hadn't seen him in person. I'd only seen a little bit of tape, and it was from years ago. And I knew that Bobby was in for a fight, and he drops him in the first round. Bobby drops Materna in the first round. I thought that was it. And then Materna comes back, and according to a couple of the judges, wins round 2 and wins round 3. So it showed a lot, like we've seen in the past. If you fight for Joe Board, Luke Grizzle got knocked down. Luke Grizzle got up. AJ Materna gets up. They continue to fight. So that's awesome. That was a great fight. After that, we had, one of the surprises of the card was we had kind of the hometown guy from about 45 minutes away, Jeremy Mitchell, a big-time MMA fighter, brings a big crowd, has a lot of support, has a lot of talent, trains out of Advantage MMA with Derrick Lambert. A lot of people, he was making his pro debut. I'd said going into the fight, a lot of people don't go up against somebody like Dreon Martin in your pro debut.
Yep.
He was fine with it. We tried to put a good fight together. Dreon came in 0-1, but his loss was to Lambert. And, Jeremy came out, and this is something that's kind of cool, is Dreon Martin's had about 40 fights, and he's never been dropped. And in the first round, Jeremy Mitchell comes out and drops him. And I'm like, oh man, this kid is the real deal. But then Dreon got up, and he went to work, and he won round 2, and he won round 3, and he won round 4, and ultimately got his hand raised with what ended up being a pretty awesome pro fight.
Yeah, I agree. I think after that knockdown, Dreon did a fantastic job of pressing. I think that he kept moving forward, and I think that's probably what got him the win on the cards. Again, glad I'm not a judge, because it would have been very difficult to, I can imagine them sitting there going, oh my gosh, who do I give this one to? So great fight. You're right. It's unfortunate for not really a hometown guy, but just right down the road, he definitely had plenty of fans there. And I definitely hope, and I don't think that they would ever, but I hope they don't give up on him, because, like you said, that's not a guy that you would typically fight in a debut. That 0-1 record doesn't mean anything, because like you said, he lost to Derrick Lambert, who obviously is a great fighter. And he went the distance with Derrick Lambert. It was, he wasn't a lay down fight. And like you said, he's got tons of MMA fights, under his belt, that kind of thing. So he's a polished guy. He's not somebody that just came in off the street. So another great fight, man. I mean, that was, it was a pleasant surprise to see such a good pro fight thrown in there.
One of the interesting things was after the fight, I'm back in the locker room and Jeremy Mitchell's talking. I'm talking with him a little bit. And he said, I had forgot, because he's been in the cage so much and he's not boxing. It's really amateur USA, young kid type stuff. So whenever I was talking to him, he said, I forgot you don't get to rest in boxing, whether you're on the mat in the cage or you're up against the cage or you're clinched or whatever, there's a moment where you get to kind of catch your breath. And he came out in the first round and showed, I do think Jeremy Mitchell is a better fighter than Dreon Martin, but Dreon Martin was better prepared for the circumstances to box for 4 rounds. And it was, it was interesting getting that perspective from him, where you don't really think about, like MMA, there is a chance to get a breather. You can take the guy down. And boxing, there's nowhere to hide. So that was great. After that, we went into our tournament. We had our 2 light heavyweight bouts. Down to the final 4 of them. The first one was Keenan Williams matched up with Tyler Anskoff, your true raw street fighting type technique versus a USA boxer. Keenan presented some challenges. He throws from different angles. He moves differently. He tries to be awkward to present a challenge that they haven't seen. He did that. At times he was successful, but ultimately we've said it how many times, when 2 guys are about the same, the guy who's the better boxer usually wins. And that's what happened. And that's what happened.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, a Joe Board guy, and Ainskoff's going to come in there fighting. He looks better every single time I've seen him. And just like you said, if you've got a fighter versus a boxer and they're about the same guy, the boxer is normally going to win. And I think that's probably what got him the win for sure. He, just a little bit more polished, that the whole science side of it. And, but they're both very skilled. I mean, it wouldn't have been shocking either way to see either one of those guys win. So,
and I think those 2 guys are probably the most cool in the ring.
Yeah.
Like that's their element. That's where they like to be. You mentioned earlier, like when Joe Board says something, then the fighter does it. We were sitting there and he goes, go over the top. Next thing you know, overhand right, boom. 30 seconds later, next round, he comes out and he tells him, says, double up that hook. Boom. The second hook catches him clean. Like, that is boxing. I wish people could hear all that stuff that was going on.
We were smiling from ear to ear. We were literally smiling. And we didn't even have to say anything. We just looked at each other because, Joe's 2 feet from us, telling him what to do. And that's I say that all the time. I tell people that's the stuff you don't really get to see. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. You don't see it very often at a tough man type, but you definitely don't see it at a rough and rowdy garbage. I'm not even going to apologize. But you don't see it because it's not really a science. There are definitely some matches in those, those events that definitely have true boxing behind it. But for the most part, it's not like that. And, I tell people all the time, when you hear, 2-2-1 and they actually do it and you go, oh man, and it works. That's because he knows what he's talking about. So just listen to him.
Well, and
it's fantastic.
And I think we both agree, Joe Board's about the example of what to do on that kind of stuff. Like, I talked to him on the phone, it was either Sunday or Monday. I kind of lost track of him. But whenever I was talking to him and I said, yeah, man, when you said go over the top, and boom, he threw it, there it was. And I said, when you said double the hook, and he starts laughing. He's like, how do you remember that? I said, that's what me and James are listening to. Like, we're listening to you as much as we're watching the fight. But no, I thought it was a great performance by Tyler. And Tyler feels, and I've talked a little bit with him, Tyler feels like he won with a bad performance. That's a great fighter. When you can have somewhat an off night and still get the win, that's what it takes sometimes in boxing.
Absolutely.
So the next one was Arthur Brown, another street beefs guy, kind of a little bit raw. Arthur Brown going up against Mitchell Reynolds. Now, Mitchell Reynolds had entered a few of them semi-pro contests. He had won them all. He had entered our tournament. He had won it. I don't know if Mitchell had, I know he had some losses in amateur, but it wasn't very many. And he goes up against Arthur Brown, 2 guys who are used to winning. 2 guys are used to being the fastest guy in the ring, the strongest guy in the ring, and the most skilled guy in the ring. that was billed to be a really awesome fight. I thought whoever won that might end up with the championship. And Arthur, it was a close fight. This is another one, like you say, sometimes nobody burned the building down if they would announce Mitchell, but Arthur ultimately got his hand raised and he advances to the finals.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said it all. Two great fighters. There's a reason why they were in the semifinal, and you already said it. The reason that those guys have probably won some of those other events is because they're better boxers. And that's what it basically ends up coming down to is they know how to box, they know how to throw down the middle, and they've got somebody in their corner that knows how to, tell them how to move their feet right instead of just standing there brawling. And that's how they got as far as they did. But it has set us up for a really good championship, I think, coming up in that title fight. I think it's going to be a good one. It's just set up to be a great one. And again, that's another one where I'm glad I didn't have to be the judge, or the referee.
And, we go into another scenario here of Arthur Brown, the street fighting raw. And now he's won some semi-pro contests and stuff like that. But Arthur Brown going Tyler Anscoff, it's another one of those fighters, boxers matchups. And we'll see which one's able to kind of push their wheel on the other one. So it's a great fight. It's a great championship. Whoever wins that, I feel safe of saying with the path they had to take both of them to get there, whoever wins that fight is the best light heavyweight amateur that we've got.
Nobody's been handed anything. Nobody has been anything.
After that, we had another pro bout where we had a similar scenario, kind of the hometown guy at Advantage MMA, Rick Caruso, comes into the fight. He comes in 2-1 as a pro, but he hadn't boxed in a long time. He goes up a guy, Quintrell Leach, one of Marcus Luck's guys. This kid was as raw as you could possibly get. He had weeks of training to be a pro boxer.
Mm-hmm.
He gets in the ring. He's a little out of shape, everything, but he had heart. And the kid really, he came in, he did way more than he should. Rick didn't necessarily have to take that fight and move forward with it. He did. It says a lot about Rick Caruso. He didn't care.
Sure.
He was probably giving up 10, 15 pounds on fight night, if not more. You could see it in the ring. And Rick came out. He was busy. He wasn't doing much damage, but he was staying active. And then Leach, as the fight went on, had more gas left in the tank, and third, fourth round kind of went to work and ended up getting the decision for his pro debut.
Yep, absolutely. And Coach Luck told us before the fight, he was kind of laughing. He's like, look, man, this guy's probably not going to outbox anybody. He's like, but I bet you he throws more punches, and I'll bet you he throws harder ones. And I'll bet you by the end of the fight, he's still going to be throwing punches. I mean, he told us exactly what was going to happen ultimately. Whether or not we thought he was going to win or not, I don't know. But he promised us that he was going to fight. Calls him the cigarette man. He literally stopped me right before. I mean, it's like 2 fights before. He said, hey, did you get his nickname? And I was like, no, actually I didn't. He didn't tell me. And he goes, cigarette man. And I looked at him, I'm laughing. I'm like, really? The cigarette man? He said, oh yeah. He said, because when he first came into the gym, he couldn't get through 30 seconds of fight. And I'd be looking for him. Where's he at? He was out there smoking.
Yeah.
So he's had to battle through a little bit of that. But the guy absolutely never stopped moving forward. He took a lot of those punches, and he was throwing heavier hands, I felt like. And I think sometimes it comes down to damage. And I think that it looked, in that third and fourth round, he was throwing heavier punches and landing more of them, I thought. And I think that's how he probably got the win against, Caruso in almost his backyard the same way.
Well, and like you said, like when you're talking about a guy with bad cardio necessarily and not much training, it was all heart. Like when Leach figured out that he could fight and he had a chance to win this thing, Luck did have him pumped up in the corner. Like in between rounds, Luck was giving him like, come on, let's go. And the kid had a lot of heart. So it was awesome to watch the experience. I hate it for Rick, the way that it went down, but Rick's a fighter. He'll bounce back and he'll be all right. So then after that, we had our 2 heavyweight tournament fights. The first one being Gary Rowland of Huntington versus Brandon Boggs. I think we kind of knew what was coming there. 2 guys that was going to meet in the middle of the ring and slug it out for a minute and see which one of them landed. Ultimately, Gary landed. He dropped Boggs in the first. Boggs got back up. One of the toughest guys we could see goes to the corner. I don't know. I think about this. How many guys don't want to fight Gary Rowland to start with? Yep. And now you end up fighting Gary Rowland. You end up getting dropped in the first round. After you get dropped, you go to the corner. How many guys would have stayed in the corner? how many guys would have said, no, that's it. My jaws hurt, my whatever, that would have been it. Brandon Boggs was never going to do that. Brandon Boggs came back out for the second round. He actually tries to walk forward. He gets called again, gets dropped. At that point, the legs weren't really under him. The referee made a good decision and stopped it right then. But Gary Rowland is rolling. Like, Gary Rowland is the guy, right? He is absolutely. And at this point, he's going to be tough to beat. But what'd you think of that? The way Boggs, he wasn't scared of him.
This is another one of those where the Fox and I, the referee, before the fights, we're standing there talking, and he was making sure who the two guys were. He was like, "Is this the guy with the chops?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we both said, you know, I'm just glad I'm not fighting either one of them, because they both come to fight. You know, Boggs is a huge guy just to look at, and you know he's tough as nails. And then Rowland is like, I mean, he's just different. Like, he looks like something off of a movie, right? I mean, the guy's just, I think you said on our last show that that's the guy you would pick to not come in a dark alley with. He's a great dude, and he's a great guy, but military guy, you know, just tough as all. And he absolutely throws so hard and so fast, but his boxing gets better all the time as well. And this is another one of those. You had kind of brawler versus boxer, and that's why I think Boggs got caught. You know, he's just more polished, and you know, he's so strong and just so fast all at the same time. And you know, Boggs just couldn't stop getting touched on his chin. But like you said, he was a little frustrated that Fox stopped the fight. But, and I will say that both of them, both referees do a fantastic job, I think, especially with the amateur side, because you have to protect these guys from themselves. You know, I think if he'd have got a standing 8, Boggs probably would have stood there cross-eyed trying to fight him. And, you know, that's the referee's job, is to stop that. So, but no, I mean, 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10 guys other than Boggs probably would have taken a knee in the corner, just like you said. They would never come out of that corner had he even went in the ring with him. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So
and Boggs, you know, Boggs has pride. He's got a lot of, I don't really know how to say it, but like, he was even upset that he thought that the official scoring was going to be that he got knocked out, and he wanted to make sure that was a technical knockout, not that he didn't get knocked out, you know. So, you know, it just goes, that's who Brandon Boggs is. But Gary advances again. Now he's in the championship. Our co-main event for the night was Bad Matt Adams versus Derrick Gibson. I think everybody agrees Derrick Gibson was the best heavyweight boxer in the tournament. He not only was the best boxer, he was strong, he was fast, he had footwork, he had beat Gary in the past, like knocked him out. Like, this was, I mean, a lot of people, if we were in Vegas, probably would have been putting money on Derrick to win the whole thing. Matt Adams comes into this tournament with no boxing background. He's an All-American wrestler. He's an MMA guy. He's as tough and strong as they come. He trained almost nothing for this, and Matt Adams shows up and does what Matt Adams does, and walks forward and throws punches and is tough. And he gave it to Derrick. Derrick called him some, which was good. We saw the first test of Matt Adams's chin, and it apparently is just as strong as the rest of him. But and Matt Adams ultimately gets a close decision, and here we are, Matt Adams, Gary Rowland. But talk a little bit about Derrick Gibson versus Matt Adams.
So we're now talking about the 9th fight, and the first 8 fights that we've talked about, we've said that's that whole boxer versus fighter thing. You know, the boxer's usually going to win. Well, guess what? Not on this one, because Bad Matt Adams came forward, and I just thought it was funny from day one when one of his coaches, our good buddy Justin Navaria, said he throws lunch boxes. And that's what the guy did. I mean, he throws just crazy heavy hands, but he does have some head movement. You can see that he's been trained to, you know, and you have to be in good shape if you're a former wrestler and MMA guy. So I mean, it's not that shocking, but you're exactly right. You know, you wouldn't pick that guy to win necessarily, because you would think he would get outboxed. But when you're as tough as he is, you know, and as big and just strong and hard to move as he is, and he throws those heavy hands, you know, I think it probably came down to damage again and just throwing, you know, bigger, heavier punches. And that's what the judges saw, and that's what got him the win. It's not shocking by any means, because we said it from day one. From his very first fight, it's like, oh, okay, this guy, man, he throws hard, and he just continues to throw and throw and throw.
Well, and we talk about all the time that the boxer almost always wins, but that's why
Yep.
we say the boxer almost always wins. Is
That's
because every now and then you run into a guy like Matt Adams. Mike Shepard said it when he was commentating the pay-per-view in Huntington in round 2. He said, this guy might be too much for these boxers. Like, he's just that much a dominant physically.
Like a tank.
Yeah, he is. And it's like, can you really picture somebody hurting him? No, I can't. But if you did know somebody who could hurt him, it's Gary Rowland, so here it is. It's
coming. I mean, I don't think we could have written it any better. I mean, look, these guys, there's been a lot of guys in this thing that could have won it all for sure. You mentioned Grizzle. I mean, that guy is a great boxer, and he's a monster, and he's huge. So, I mean, there's just.
Well, and Grizzle was beat by Gary Rowland. Well, if Gary Rowland doesn't beat Grizzle, who does? Like, I mean,
that's right.
That's
right.
So that's awesome. That'll be our championship, Matt Adams versus Gary Rowland. And then we had our main event, the pro fight. Derrick Lambert, he had been on a 4 or 5 year layoff. He came out of retirement down in Bluefield on our first show, got himself to a 5-1 record, became eligible for the West Virginia state title. It had recently been vacated. Zach Kuhn came in with a 10-8 record. He was eligible. We were able to put the ABA title as well as the West Virginia state title together, 2 belts. It was scheduled for 8. It went 8. I think some of us kind of saw that coming. This is a matchup of really 2 guys who showed they can both box. And it ended up being, when you put a main event together and you think, man, what we really want to accomplish here is to show people what polished boxing, professional boxing at the highest level in our state looks like. Those were the guys to do it. There was a little bit of personal beef going on. There's a little bit of a territory war down there in McDowell, Mercer County. And now we know, according to the judges, according to all 3 of them, Derrick Lambert was better. So he's now the West Virginia state and ABA super welterweight champ. It was an awesome fight.
It was. I mean, again, I'm glad I wasn't one of the judges. We know both guys. And have seen basically all of their boxing career. And it's at least the pro side of it. Zach Kuhn looked the better boxer. He looked physically as good as I think I've probably ever seen him. I mean, I just thought he looked fantastic. His counter punching was just, on point all night long. This is one that I think comes down to damage. And there was a couple of rounds in there in particular where Zach took too much. There was just a lot of, and you can't tell Zach that, and you can't tell his trainer that, because they know how tough he is. But outside looking in, we knew Zach was fine. Just because his nose is bleeding literally didn't mean anything to Zach. He's going to keep coming forward, and he did. He boxed. He's moving around the ring. He never stopped. But he looked a lot worse for the wear than Derrick did.
And what you're alluding to, for the fans that weren't there, Zach comes out head and shoulders, I feel like, outboxed Derrick the first 2 rounds, showed his class, showed the shape he was in, showed what he could do. I think everybody agrees that Zach kind of came out and won first, second round easy. Derrick kind of called him a little bit in the 3rd round, and Zach emotionally wanted to show that Derrick couldn't hurt him. So what's he do? He puts his hands down. He lets him hit him, and he hit him and hit him and hit him like 20 times. And when that happened, I mean, there was some damage from it. Was Zach okay? Right. Yes. Did Derrick come back out and win the 4th round? Yeah, he did. And then he starts to put himself in a position where I think the way the judges saw this was, I think Zach continued to win some rounds after that, but he wasn't winning them in the manner in which he won round 1 and round 2. And for the judges, in the judges' eyes, you see this polished boxer winning rounds in the beginning, and then you see a little bit of a more, not sloppy, but a more of a fight than the boxing in the beginning. And that kind of tends to side toward Derrick. So I think they saw Derrick getting in there, mixing it up. Derrick broke his hand in the 3rd round. I've seen the X-ray. It's broke. Like it's done for a while. And he did that in the 3rd round when Zach had his hands down, and Derrick ends up fighting 5 more rounds and earning the victory pretty much one-handed. Awesome fight. But yeah, I think you're right when you alluded to the fact that once the damage was done, you can't undo it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I think in a close fight, when you're looking at that type of thing, when the doctor's over checking him every, a lot closer, and he was bloody, he was bleeding, after, the third round all the way through. And once your nose is broken or hit like that and you're bleeding, it's not going to stop in the middle of the fight.
No.
And so it just looks worse. So I think that had to have a lot to do with it. It's a shame that one of those two guys had to lose. It's a shame that Kuhn was in such great shape and looked so great and had to lose. But it was a fantastic fight. And it's another one of those where you've matched, two guys, and that's what we want, especially on the pro main event, is a real fight. We don't want to lay down. We're not looking for 13-second knockouts. Sometimes they're fun to see, but we want real fights, and we want, the whole iron sharpens iron type thing. And I think we got it again.
Well, and Schemo said if they would have scheduled that for 20 rounds, those guys would have went 20 rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. With a broken hand and a busted up nose and whatever else came with it. Yeah. I mean,
tough,
you're
tough guys that know how to fight. They showed they're the lead for the state. Derrick's now the champ, and super proud of him at 34 years old, come out of retirement, doing what he's doing is pretty special. All right. So next we've got coming up December 3rd. It's a Friday night fight, December 3rd. We're back at the Convention Center at the Mountain Health Arena in Huntington, West Virginia. We're going to have our championship heavyweight for the year, Gary Rowland versus Matt Adams. We're going to have our championship light heavyweight, which is Arthur Brown versus Tyler Anscoff. We're going to have a couple pro fights. They're local guys. I'm so close to having those lined out to where we can be able to announce them. They're going to be exciting. And then we're going to fill the card. I want 14, 15 fights of amateurs. The reason we're doing that is going into next year. These tournaments are going to start over in January. We're going to have a 145-pound class, a 165-pound class, a 178 class, and a heavyweight. So going from 2 weight classes to 4 weight classes, we want to use the rest of this card, 12, 13, 14 bouts on top of what we've already got, to get some amateurs in there, get used to the ring, let us see kind of who needs to be in and who doesn't. And we're going to try to go ahead and start getting ready for those tournaments next year. So hopefully we have a big turnout with the amateurs. I know Huntington's a short drive for you, so that's good. I'm sure Gary will have a big turnout. Matt Adams is not from that far away. It should be an awesome event, and I'm excited. I love that venue.
Me too. It was a great venue. I couldn't really picture it. I'd been there, but couldn't really picture it till it was all set up. But it's almost perfect. From the locker rooms all the way to the ring. It's a great setup. Whether you get general admission or front row, it's a great place to watch fights. It's going to be super exciting. I have no doubt that there's going to be a whole lot of people there. Because of, some of the local names that we're going to have. So I'm super excited. I can't wait.
Well, and we got lucky. Our championships came out better than we could have ever drew them up. The guys that's in them is totally awesome. I'm excited. So tickets will go on sale next week. We're excited to be there. It's going to be a great night of fights. Hope everybody turns out. Should be great. It's a great ending too, to kind of wrap up our first year of the King of the Mountain State. Excited about that. Thanks for everything, man. I'll be talking to you soon. When we get closer to fight time, we'll sit down and give a little preview of the upcoming once we get our card put together. But once again, thanks for everything, and I'll see you pretty soon.
You got it. Thanks, brother.
Thanks.